One more box of that.
Okay. Wonderful work on the items there. Thank you. There it is. There. You know, I think a lot of times people are working behind the scenes and we're not aware of it. And I think we owe a big thanks to Mark for putting up the Christmas tree and the decorations on the tables and all. So let's give him a round of applause. Thank you very much, Mark. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Man, I don't know if I can do it in a short time like this. But I had a lot of things I wanted to say. It's a preface to what we're going to be talking about. Is that, I'll find my notes, there they are. We've been talking in the book of Matthew for a long time. And you know, it's interesting that many times, we just sang that song, Go Tell It on the Mountain. And almost every place that Jesus went, he was either in the water on a boat or he was up in the mountain. And we're going to see today that he goes into a place alone. Now, what I want you to see is that back in chapter 12, I'm not going to go there, I don't think. Back in chapter 12, we see that the religious leaders rejected Jesus, and it said in one of the verses, they went about seeing how they could destroy him. Okay? And then, right after that, the next couple of verses said, this is my beloved Son whom I am well pleased, and he will be a light unto the Gentiles. Now, you know, here we see this transition that's going to be taking place. That Jesus has come for the Jewish people, but the common people accepted him. The religious people wanted no part of him. They tried to trip him up, try to, you know, get him to say something against the law or against Moses. And he kept on saying, a greater than Moses is here. A greater than the temple is here. You know, and a greater than Jonah is here. And they just did not want to hear it. And so, when we get over here, and we see in chapter 15 of Matthew, is that this group came together. I better find chapter 15 first. I had it in chapter 12. Of course I did. But, you know, when Jesus was confronting the Pharisees, he called them hypocrites. And then it says that the disciples came to him and said, don't you know that you really hurt their feelings whenever you said these things? And especially about, it's not what goes into the body that defiles it, it's what comes out of the mouth. And then Jesus even stood up and told the people, hear this, you know, it's not what goes in that defiles you, it's what comes out. You know, and so he wanted everybody to know it. And then the disciples came to Jesus, and this is what's frustrating to Jesus. They said in verse 17, or verse 16, yeah, I'll get it. It's in verse 15.
Oh.
He says, then answered Peter and said unto Jesus. Now this is Peter, he's always making these blunders. He said, declare unto us this parable. Now, you know, before Jesus told them all of the parables about the tares and the wheat and the leaven and all that stuff. And so he explained two of them, but he had all these parables. He said, Do you understand all of these now? Oh, yeah. Well, here, it wasn't a parable. He was just saying, what you eat comes out through the bottom. He said, how simple is that? But they didn't see the difference now between what was actual and what was a parable. So then, this is what Jesus said. He's getting a little frustrated, I believe. He said, and Jesus said, are you also yet without understanding? He's saying, I'm sure that he must have sometimes, because he was totally God, he was totally man, and it's the man part of him that's getting frustrated. And he's thinking like, Lord, Father, are you sure these are the people you want me to work with to take over after I'm gone? He said, yeah. He said, he's the one. Because Peter continually opens his mouth at the wrong time and gets his foot stuck in it. And then he says here, do not you yet understand that whatsoever enters into the mouth goes into the belly and is cast out in the trough? But those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart and defile the man. For out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, murderers, adulteries, fornication, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man, but to eat with unwashed hands defileth not a man. He says, you're going to live for eternity. And it's not what you eat right now that's going to affect your eternal being. He says, what comes out of the heart is what's going to affect your eternal destiny. That's what he's saying. And then, the thing is that I was watching a program the other day, and I almost turned it off, but it was on TBN. They were talking to the owner of TBN, and they were talking to a medical doctor. And they were talking about the stomach and the bowel, the whole system. And he says, many times we treat symptoms from, like, maybe I've got a headache, but the headache is only because of what I put in the stomach. Like I've been drunk sometimes when I was younger. Much younger. And I'd get up and I would have, don't anybody speak too loud, And I have done some stupid things when I was younger that I wish I could take back, but I can't. But the thing is that this doctor was saying how this is the biometric something or other, big word, it controls how it breaks down the stuff that you put in your body. And it says, this enzyme is supposed to go to the brain. This one is supposed to go to the fingernails. And this one is to go to your ear so you can hear better. And so he's saying a lot of things we think is the brain, they're coming to believe now. And in the Old Testament, it always refers to, not necessarily the heart, but it says in the bowels. He said the bowels of mercy. It means if something bad happens, you feel it down in here, and it might give you a headache, but it gets here first. And so he's saying, they're thinking that, there's more to it, that the heart has a mind of its own. And when they talk about heart, he means the very essence of your being. Now, we in our country say, oh, I love you with all of my heart. But in the African culture, they thought the heart was, ugh. It says, I love you with all of my liver. And you say, oh, how romantic is that? But that's what they feel. They feel the liver is what's important. So whenever they take an animal, they eat the liver. You eat the liver. It's got good vitamins in it. But But I want you to see here, last week when we were talking, we said that John the Baptist's disciples had come to Jesus and they had told him that John the Baptist just had his head cut off. And Jesus wanted to go to a place apart, but at the same time his disciples came back and said, Lord, when you gave us this power, we went out and we healed these people, we cast out demons, and it was so great. And it was good news and bad news. And Jesus says, why don't you come away a while into a desert place? So they got in the ship and they went over to this desert place. But the people that were on the side of the shore saw where he was gone and they ran around. And it's a desperate thing, because they wanted their relatives to be healed. They knew he could do it. And so when he gets over on the other side, they're waiting for him. And he gets out. It's, Well, here, he was working with his group of people, and that's where he fed the 5,000 people. Remember that? He fed 5,000 people plus women and children. And then we just got part of the picture because it said that he constrained his disciples to get into the boat, and he would send the multitude away. But then when we go to another one of the Gospels, like in Mark, it says that they would have taken Jesus by force and made him king. I mean, when you get 5,000 people over here that want you to be king, and you had 5,000 or 4,000 someplace else, and they want you to be king, he said, my time is not yet. So you guys, they were probably stirring up the crowd. Come on, we can do it. We can go down and take them over in Jerusalem. And so he sent them away into the boat, and then he went up into the mountain and he prayed. And then in the middle of the night, he said that storm was at that boat. They'd been rowing all night. Now, Jesus had been healing people. When you got this going through, I want to go away and just get my thoughts straight. My cousin had just been beheaded. All my disciples come back and they're jumping for joy, and I'm mixed emotions here. And these people want me to heal them. But it says that he had compassion. Meant he denied himself and he went and he served. But when you stop to think of 8,000 people, 5,000 men plus women and children, it might have been 15,000 people there. How do you manage a crowd like that? And so he sent them all away. He went up to pray, and he told the disciples to go, and he knew that storm was coming. And his disciples were right in it. And so here he comes just walking on the water, and it's about between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning. And Peter's, it's a ghost, it's a spirit, and the Lord said, be not afraid, it is I. And Peter again said, hey, but you, Lord, let me come out. And so he said, come. And so Peter got out, and he was walking on the water. He actually was walking on water until he took his eyes off of Jesus, and he saw the waves and splash, and then he started sinking. He said, Lord, save me. And the Lord reached out and saved him. And when he got into the boat, the wind stopped. And he said to Peter, why did you doubt? You have such little faith. Believe in what I can do. Believe what you can do if you have your eyes fixed on me. And that's what he's telling us today. Oh, you of little faith. We're going through some hard times. We're going to be going through some hard times in our country. And we're not aware of it yet. But here he goes over and he says this in verse 21. Then Jesus went thence and departed into the coast of Tyre and Sidon. Now, and behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. But he answered her not a word. Okay. Now, you got to get this picture. The Sea of Galilee is down here. Tyre and Sidon are way up here, about 60 miles away. Now, they don't have cars in those days, and the Jewish people were not allowed to have horses. They had mules, but they didn't have any there where they were. They walked up there to Tyre and Sidon. Now, what you need to know is Tyre and Sidon was Gentile country. And no respectable Jew, because they despised the Gentiles, and they called them dogs, like scavengers, they would not be seen up there. And what you don't get the picture of, it looks like, here, if we go over to Mark, and we read this same story, and it says, in verse 24 of Mark chapter 7, it says, And from thence he arose and went into the borders of Tyre and Sidon, and he entered into a house, and he would have no man know it, but he could not be hid. That's the thing, is he finally says, I'm going to go from the Jewish place, and I'm going to go to the Gentile area where nobody would be coming up to see me up there, and I'm going into a house and have some privacy with my friends, my disciples. But no, he could not be hid, because this lady comes along, and she's a Canaanite. And you have to realize that when the Jewish people came out of bondage out of Egypt, they were supposed to run all of those people out of that promised land, and the Canaanites were the main ones. Okay? And now the land that God had said Israel would have was way up at the Euphrates River, where Turkey and Syria and Persia and Iran really is up that way, and down to the Red Sea. So they had a huge territory that they never did conquer. But now, here he is, and he wanted to have privacy, and this lady came, and she said, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with a devil. Now, it doesn't get, how bad can it get? I mean, a little girl's got a demon in her, and throws her here and throws her there, and she's being destroyed. And this lady is anxious for him to do something. She's a Gentile. And Jesus doesn't say a word to her. And it says, And he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and said, Send her away. She's crying after us. She's making a nuisance. She's making a scene. People are looking at us. Send her away. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, he said this not to her, but to the disciples, so she could hear it. But he said, It is not good to take the children's bread and cast it to the dogs. Now, the Hebrew people call the Gentiles dogs, scavengers. But the word here is like a little puppy. And we don't get the full understanding of what he's doing here until you take everything in context. That first she came and she said, Oh Lord, thou son of David. She thought, man, he's healing all of those Jewish people, I'm going to come to him and make believe I'm a Jew. Thou son of David means I know that you're the one that's going to be the king. But he didn't answer. But the second time, she said, Lord, help me. And then he said, it's not good to take the bread and give it to the dogs. She said, no, but the puppies eat the crumbs that fall off the table. And what they were saying is a picture that the Jewish people didn't have knives and forks like we do. Can you believe that? They didn't have napkins like we do. And so when they would eat something greasy, and they used to eat sheep, lamb chops, and those things are greasy. And you get them on the finger, and when they baked the bread, it'd be in a big loaf. They didn't have sliced bread like we get in the store. It would be a big loaf. And a lot of people don't like that bread, but that's the Italian bread, And so what they would do, you'd bake off a piece and you'd break off a piece, and I got my fingers, and I'd take a piece of that bread and I'd rub that on my finger, and throw it on the floor. They didn't have carpet in those days either. And throw that on the floor, and the dogs would run over there and grab it and eat it. And he said, it's not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. She wanted healing. She wanted something more than crumbs. And she said, no, Lord, but the dogs eat the crumbs that fall off the master's table. And he said, oh, woman, great is your faith. He said, you don't only want the crumbs, you know who I am, because you said, Lord, help me. And he helped her. And that's the important thing to know, is that we can't fake it and just say, Lord, I went to church all my life. I donated money. He says, depart from me. I never knew you. What he's trying to say is that how much have you given? How much have you thought about what my son did? How much are you dedicated to the cause that he wants to spread the gospel throughout the whole world? And he says, and when I come to him, I don't come and say, well, I give $1,000 to the church, and I went on a mission trip one time. He said, no. He said, just as I am, without one plea, but that your blood was shed for me, there's nothing I can do to earn my salvation. And I owe it all to you. And we have all those songs. All to Jesus, all to Jesus, all to Jesus I owe. But if we say we owe it all, what are we doing about it? And then, remember, a couple of weeks ago, I said over in the book of Malachi, if you want to be an Italian, you'll call it Malachi, But it's in Malachi, and he says that there was a book of remembrance that was written before God for those who thought upon his name. And sometimes we don't think about his name until we get in the pickle, and then we say, oh, Lord. He said, who are you? And do you pray? Do you fast? Do you give? Do you worship him? So, but what I wanted to say is, let's go here a little bit farther. And verse 28. Then Jesus answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith. Be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. Now, here's another very important section. And Jesus departed from there and came nigh unto the Sea of Galilee. He came near the Sea of Galilee, up at the upper end, but he didn't get down to it. But it was called the Decapolis, and that's where there's about 10 cities up in the northern area, and they were all Gentile areas. And it says, and Jesus departed thence and came nigh unto the Sea of Galilee, and went up into a mountain and sat down there. And great multitudes came unto him, having with them those that were lame, blind, dumb, maimed, and many others, and cast them down at Jesus' feet, and he healed them, insomuch that the multitude wondered when they saw the dumb to speak, the maimed to behold, the lame to walk, and the blind to see. They glorified the God of Israel. See, that's what Israel was supposed to do. They were supposed to be representatives for the Lord and then bring glory to him, and the Gentiles would say, look how their God is blessing them. We want that God. But they didn't do it. So when Jesus came and he did what the Israelites were supposed to do, they glorified the God in heaven, the God of Israel. And then it says here, and it's so easy to read over this. Then Jesus called his disciples unto him and said, I have compassion on the multitude, because they continue with me now 3 days and have nothing to eat. I will not send them away fasting, lest they faint in the way. And his disciples said unto him, where in the world will we get so much bread in this wilderness? Now, over in the other ones, Mark and Luke, Jesus knew what he was going to do, but he was talking to Philip basically, and he said, Philip, what are we going to do here with all these people? And Philip said, man, 2,000 pennies isn't going to buy bread enough for these people. But Jesus knew what he did. And he said, well, what do you have? And he went out and looked. They come back and he said, we got 7 loaves and a few little fishes. Okay? And here, and Jesus said unto them, how many loaves have ye? And they said, 7. Now, Jesus could have done it with 1 loaf, but he's trying to make a point. Remember before they had 3 little loaves and a couple of fishes, and then they took up 12 baskets full, 1 for each of the disciples. Now, do you think any of those disciples, when they took up the basket, realized that, man, this is a lot of bread that we got out of those 5 little biscuits? And you think anybody offered Jesus, you want some of this? There's only 12 baskets here. You take, no, they didn't, So Jesus is trying to say, look, no matter what you have, and there's scriptures that says, bring all the treasures into the storehouse, and I will open up the windows of heaven to bless you. He says it would be pressed down, shaken together, running over. And that's what they say. Do you remember that? And then even Luke tells you that. And he's trying to teach them a lesson. Don't worry how little you have. I can use anything. And then he started off, he says, we have 7 and a few little fishes. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves and the fishes, and gave thanks, and brake them, and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat, and were filled. Here again, that word means stuffed. And they took up the broken meat that was left, 7 baskets full. So they had the same thing. But here's the important thing. When they took the baskets, that little boy had these little cakes, and the Jewish people had these little baskets with a strap they could wrap over it, and it had a neck on it. It down here like a little ball, had a neck on it with a top on it. Now, they hated the Gentile people so much that when they would go to the market and buy stuff to put in their basket, they did not want any dust at the Gentiles' feet blow up and get into their food and contaminate it. I mean, they were that bad, And so it was a little baskets that they had. Each one of the apostles had a little basket full. But here, where he's working with these Gentile people, it says he had 7 baskets full. Now, these are the big bushel basket type things with an open face, because the Gentiles didn't care. You know, they didn't have any scruples about what they ate. And then later on, that is the same kind of a basket that when Paul was in this one place and he was preaching in the synagogue, and these guys said, "We're not going to rest until we kill him." And they let Paul down over a wall in a basket. Now, Paul might have been a little guy, but still, it's the big basket. And so he's trying to say, I'm trying to get a point across to you. And just a couple of verses later, it says this. And then they that did eat were 4,000 men, beside women and children. And he sent away the multitude, and took ship, and came into the coast of Magdala. The Pharisees also with the Sadducees came, tempting him. Now see, they're tempting him to see if he would say something wrong, and desired of him they would show them a sign from heaven. And he answered and said unto them, when it is evening, and I'll stop with this, you say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning you say, it will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and lowering. O ye hypocrites, you can discern the face of the sky, but can you not discern the signs of the time? A wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given unto it, but the sign of the prophet Jonas. And he left them and departed. And when his disciples were come to the other side, they had forgotten to take bread. Now, we're going to stop there. But I just want you to know that here is going to be the main confrontation that he's going to be having with these people. Okay, with the scribes and the Pharisees. Now, what he's saying, he says, and it's sort of true, you know, you could tell the weather, they didn't have aerologists or meteorologists and any of that stuff back then, and these were fishermen, so they learned to read the sky, when it's going to rain, it's not going to rain, a storm, and so you could do that. So anyway, he's getting ready to give them a hard time, and he said, you can read the signs of the weather, but you can't read the signs of, say, the Messiah is here. You know, and we're going to see that a little bit later on, where he's going to condemn them for that. And he says, woe unto you, woe unto you. And then what I wanted to say, and I didn't get a chance to, but I will next week, is that we have signs that are happening all around us, happening in our country, the countries around us, and especially in Israel. You know, so keep your eyes on it. There's events that are taking place. One event I'm going to tell you about, and then I'll stop, is that over in Israel, they have all of the instruments ready to put into the temple that's going to be built. Okay? And all of the priests have been trained to do the different kinds of sacrifices. Now, the Israeli people were only allowed to go up on the Temple Mount, even though they're the ones that are protecting it. The Muslims could go how many they wanted. They could only go maybe 2 or 3 at a time. They could not pray up there. They could not drink up there out of the fountains or anything. But lately, they've been letting them go up in groups of 10, maybe 15, and they could bow their head but no out loud prayers. But now, starting this, I think it's Monday, that this is the week of Hanukkah, you know. This Monday, they said that they are going to try to go up to, with the priest, up to the Temple Mount and anoint the supreme priest, the high priest, because they have the oil now that they can anoint him with the oil. And there might be a fuss going on with the Muslims if they go up there and they are just doing this as a demonstration. Not that this man's going to be the high priest, but they're going to go through the ceremony of the practice for when they're going to do that. So they're expecting peace to come. You know, and we know it says peace, peace, and there is no peace. And so they are getting ready to accept the Antichrist because he will bring the peace. One other thing is that Israel just signed a peace pact a couple of months ago with Saudi Arabia for their protection because they don't have the fighting forces. Morocco, which is northern Africa, is just agreed with Israel, and Israel's going to start supplying them with arms because these people are afraid down here in Sudan and Uganda, where there's terrorists taking place, are going to come and attack them. So we see this group here that's getting together, and the Bible says, read chapter, that's what it says, read chapter 24 of Matthew. It's going to be a couple of weeks before they get there, but let's stand and we'll pray. But